And as you possibly know, Microsoft likes to throw all kinds of so-called free things at the young generation so that they kind of get stuck with it.
Yeah, I noticed with it's not just the new generation as well. There's things for small businesses with this, I think it was a small business server, where they offered essentially start-up companies earning or with takings of under X amount per year, per tax year, use basically of a full enterprise Windows server, I think it was, to help their business grow and get them addicted, obviously. And then after they make a certain amount of money, then they can then they start repaying that gift in quotation marks, that gift from Microsoft. So
wasn't there? This might be my fuzzy memory, but wasn't there recently a campaign, or still going, where Microsoft were giving free software to unemployed developers in the States? I'm sure I read something. I don't know if that's.
They have this thing called Elevate America. And I call it American Edgy because it's there is this program. That's another set of leaked documents. There is a program where Microsoft mostly tries to target governments and education and tries to spot exactly where they might be moving to any sign of I'm just going to say open. Usually it's open source, or they call it open source or Linux. Anything that Microsoft would be combated against by trying to offer a reduced rate, almost zero, and I think in some cases offering some benefits as well. So it's kind of like negative pricing against the competition, and that's supposed to be secret because they don't want everyone to put Microsoft in a position where it has to give those benefits. And what they do in the States now, they try to impose their indoctrination programs and their way of thinking on every person who's like, any person who's in a position where it's going to look good for Microsoft to do that. And one of those things is unemployed people. Another thing is like poor students, and they always have these really nice stories of like, oh, Microsoft is trying to elevate America, and there is a recession, and Microsoft will save. They have this thing called Imagine Cop. They have B-Spark, and what's the other thing called? They have one for students as well. The whole thing with the Spark. They have like 4 of them, and Spark, and it's supposed to sound good. And the way they talk, they obviously lie about it, and they make the marketing departments are all very happy to say, oh, look at Microsoft, such a wonderful company giving things for free to such poor, miserable people. The truth is they take the most vulnerable people, the people who are in a position where they have to try and free themselves from these, products that will request money later, and they dump things on them, pretending it's free of charge. And this is, so that's what Tim was talking about.
That's awful nice of Microsoft to do that, but to me it would be more advantageous if they didn't channel all these funds through tax havens and actually paid some tax to various governments around the world, rather than use tax avoidance to avoid that. That would probably be more beneficial to the public at large. But that's just me, maybe. Maybe I'm too principled, I don't know.
Talk about issues in the Irish economy now, because Microsoft actually does the accounting for Europe, mostly in Ireland, because they barely have to pay any taxes there.
Well, I mean, the link in relation to what we've just been talking about is going to be on the show notes. I mean, it struck me as quite interesting at the time. It comes from July 2010, so it was quite a while ago, but I did remember the unemployed, because I think the other bonus of targeting the unemployed developers is that if you have a developer who's just lost his job, he or she may be looking at other avenues and maybe looking at Linux or other operating systems or other products. So, of course, Microsoft will want to keep that customer or potential customer. And it was just an interesting article. So that will be on the show notes. So moving on, have you got any other examples, either Gordon or Roy, of any other fear, uncertainty?
I've got one sort of springing on from the tax example. I don't have a link to hand, unfortunately.
Right, I'm sorry about that. One of the problems of recording and doing very little editing is that when drop-offs occur, the whole show has to be restarted. So I apologise, Gordon. You can start again in a second, and we'll resume from where we left off. Gordon, you were saying?
Yes, right. Luckily, it cut off just as I was about to start something, rather than halfway through a sort of topic, which was handy, I suppose. But right, what I was about to say was I've actually found a link now, which I didn't have before. I was just going off the top of my head before. But there was a story in 2008 about Microsoft in India avoiding tax, basically. They had claimed that they were accused of not paying enough in tax for income generated from Windows and Office, and presumably other things as well, like SharePoint and whatever. And they claimed, they tried to spin it and say that it's a sale, because from what I picked up, the rates of taxes are different depending on what it is, and like a license would have cost more money per license than a sale. So they tried to get around it like that, and they tried to brush it off and get the case dismissed. But the Indian, whoever prosecuted it, I tip my hat to them. They did not give in. They forced Microsoft into court, where they again tried to insist, the lawyers still tried to insist that it was a license, and the prosecutors went and got from Microsoft's own end-user license agreement, from their own EULA. I believe it was from the Windows EULA, it may have been Vista at the time, and the words very clearly state, this product is licensed, not sold. There's no ambiguity, there's no interpretation, it's straight to the point, this product is licensed, not sold, despite what Microsoft lawyers had argued the complete opposite, under penalty of perjury, in a court of law in India, that this product is a sale, not a license, you should dismiss this case. They were hung by their own EULA, and I thought that was hilarious at the time.
Yeah. It's, yeah, there was not much more you could really say about that. I
think that's the better example of Microsoft being accused and found guilty of tax evasion. There is usually, it's kind of like a terminology issue, but you shouldn't say Microsoft evades tax when it goes to Ireland, because it's doing something that's, I wouldn't say legal, I call it legalized. When I say legalized, I mean, well, it should have been illegal, but the companies worked enough and lobbied enough to basically legalize that and say, well, that's kind of unethical, it shouldn't be done, but, well, we made it legal because it's very convenient to us and other companies, and there are lots of examples like that. In the case of India, I use the exact same story just given by Gordon, because this shows you can call the company a tax evader, technically, at least in some parts of the world. India has been quite harsh in that regard. I read an article about 2 months ago, when India was going quite harsh against other companies for similar reasons. So they seem to be in some sense ahead from a legal point of view, ahead of some other countries, which would maybe surprise you because of the corruption rates. That's kind of.
Well, India are one of the countries that you always see. I've got a lot of respect for India in this regard, and the same with Brazil. They are two of the main ones that you always see cropping up that say, we are not going to buy into this Western enforced, Western company enforced rules that are written for the West. We're not going to buy into that. And from anything from ACTA to DMCAs to intellectual property, those bandwagons. India are one of the countries who consistently say that's not right, and they won't just sign up to that, like other countries, sadly, including Britain, do. So I've got a lot of respect for the Indian system that does that.
It's the same with China and Russia. Usually you have this acronym BRIC that stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China. And in China and Russia, it's quite different. I'll just go through differences very quickly. The way I found it, in China, it's more to do with copyright being very weakly enforced. In India, it's more, as you put it, in this case, India was protesting against the OXML decision, along with Brazil, I